Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Terry McGriff Show. We have a great show for you tonight. Welcome. We're just glad to be back here, back doing into our beautiful show and our segments each and every week with my co-host, Andrea Sutton, sitting over there in the beautiful iHeart Studios here in Jacksonville, Florida. How you doing this week, Andre?
I mean, unfortunately, once again, I did not wake up in a new Bugatti. I'm a little upset about that, and I'm going to keep crying about it. But other than that, I'm doing
well. I guess right now we're producing this show. You need to go hit the lottery when you get done with it. Maybe we can hit one of them $200+ million lottery tickets, and we can really retire somewhere. You don't have to. We can do this totally for fun instead of with sponsors and things of that nature, and just enjoy that. Speaking of sponsors, I'd like to talk about a couple of our sponsors. Obviously, Team Sports for the Record here on my chest, and we got She-Car, one of the greatest companies that I've come across. They help you get your car just almost as good as some of these other cars online. You can go. You go right to auction through this company, and then you buy your car probably some of the lowest prices you can ever think of. So basically, you're buying them online at auction through She-Car. Great company. Also, just going to get a shout out to Aflac. They're one of our great supporters of the league that I run with, the Women's Tackle Football League. And we're just going to, they're great supporters and great supporters of the Terry McGriff Show and Women's Tackle Football. So what we're going to do is just going to get into our little themes, man. It's just been a hectic week since we had our relaunch last week. We've all college football seemed to got turned on its head last week with the Florida loss and a couple other upsets around there. And we're just going to go about talking about the NCAA, the conferences, just kind of making it up as it goes, the hypocrisy of some of the stuff that's going on in college football right now. Then we're going to go into, talking about the NFL. We're going to jump into some NFL, talking about, we know how good some of the teams are, like Kansas City. Pittsburgh seems to be on the slide, but we're going to talk about, who is going to end up with that first pick in the draft. We seem that everybody's starting to fall into place of where they're probably going to be right now. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit and see what might happen to upset the apple cart when it comes to that. Next, we're going to talk about something that I really just kind of snuck on me was the NBA. The NBA is already back at it with preseason action. So we're going to get into the NBA, get a little bit of talk about them and see what they got going on. They got a lot of news going on right now, and we're going to just focus on them as we end the show. This NCAA season has been something else, man. I mean, we've had all kind of different issues when we're talking about teams playing, players opting out. We still got some teams waiting to play coming up in the new year. The bowl situations where some bowls been canceled. The playoff situation right now. I mean, to me, the NCAA is just, I understand trying to make a proper adjustment, but things have been, people just seem to be making up stuff on the fly. That's why I kind of like last week's show, saying this would be the perfect time for them to play. Go ahead and do 18 playoffs with the upset, last week of Florida. That really opened up a lot of things for some teams that nobody thought that they would actually have a chance at this thing. But now they're going to have a chance that people are saying Alabama's in regardless of what happened. It's going to probably Notre Dame will be in regardless of what happens to them. So now you're talking about people talking about somebody like Iowa State possibly making the playoffs. Really? Okay. Now you're talking about what really bothers me is you're talking about, like we talked about, Michigan State opting out against playing. Michigan opting out of playing against Ohio State, when they were one of the main people crying when the Big Ten Conference decided that they were not going to play. Them, Nebraska, were the biggest, loudest voices of we want to play. You had, the players talking about they wanting to play, and now all of a sudden, all those players, when they know they're pretty much done for the season, they're opting out. It's such big hypocrisy in my book that really put a bad taste in my mouth. And then, not to mention, Washington decided that they're not going to play for the Pac-12 title because of Corona. Hey, okay, you got 45 players that are eligible. Get your butt out there and play. Now, what did they do? The Pac-12 said, well, we're just going to put Oregon in your spot. Whether they earned it or not doesn't matter. We're just going to let them play that game. It just kind of waters it down, in my opinion. I want to hear what you got to say about that.
Well, here's the thing. When we were back, live doing the show, I kept saying, you were against me when I said this, but I definitely remember saying, this will be an awful season of football. No matter how bad we want to see it, no matter how much this will be an awful season of football. And here's my problem right now. I can't say it's hypocrisy. What I can say is that right now the NCAA is trying to make the most gorgeous meal out of chicken poop. And that's what we're getting right now. I love the Cosby Show. I like this is one of my metaphors. I love the Cosby Show. And then
I remember.
He's explaining to his daughter about introducing someone to date, and he turns over a trash can and says, you put your favorite food or your favorite your steak, your collard greens, your rice, your macaroni and cheese, whatever, and you turn the trash can lid over and put your food on it. That's what we're getting right now.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in this instance, it's not really the NCAA's fault. We knew about 6-7 years ago when we got these Power 5 conferences, the things like this would come up. And yes, I understand a lot of people, and you were one of them, who want those 18 playoffs. I'm totally on the opposite end of this. Let's keep it 4. And let's see what happens. Because check this out. Now we got a season where Notre Dame gets to play in a conference championship. This time they'll play in a conference championship where they'll see a Trevor Lawrence. We don't know if Notre Dame might end up in the playoffs. This year we'll see a Pac-12 championship where the number 2 team in a division will play for a championship. I can't promise you that the best team in that conference is going to come out championship that day. We always say in football, you don't have to be the best team. You just have to be the best team that day. And so now we're getting to the point where it's championship, it's win or go home. And we're telling NCAA that they're getting it wrong. We can't say that because at the end of the day, they're doing what they can with what they have to work with. And yes, there are some teams that are going to creep up in this playoff tourney and might get a chance to win. Yeah. But like we'll talk about with the NBA a little later, this is what we have to work with in the world that we live in now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We knew that it was going to be a jacked up season. Yeah, you're 100% right. My focus back then was basically telling them take their time to do it right. And on top of that, they're trying to still cram all this in the same basically time slot normal. They still want to play the semifinals on January 1st, and people are trying to do bowl games next week without basically not any preparation time. Usually the bowl was rewarded and got to extra practices. Obviously, that's not happening this year because teams are playing right away of the bowls that did not decide to cancel. So it's just amazing the adjustments. And the reason I call it hypocrisy, because you give us a reason and then you basically go against the reason why you saying you were doing the first thing in the first place. So case in point, once again, I talked about Michigan. Michigan's talking about we want to play. We want to play. These kids deserve the chance to finish their dream, the chance to do what they needed to do. They came here to play big time football. And all of a sudden, because you're struggling now, you're going to say COVID is the reason why you can't play. Well, you got third string, you got freshmen, guys that could use those reps, that could use that film, that use that experience out there on the field when it really wasn't affected in a negative light, except for the record. You already have a booty record anyway, so you might well finish the season out against your rival. But to me, you use that as an excuse. COVID can be an excuse for anybody right now, and a lot of teams are taking that road right now. For whatever reason, saves them $1 bill on the back end or whatever. I just don't like it. I think it's hypocrisy, and I think when it all said and done, this will definitely be an asterisk year. And, coach going to get the blame, but a lot of it is human beings making decisions that suit them and only them and not thinking about the big picture. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. I want to hear what you guys say.
On one hand, I agree with you. Yeah. On one hand, I agree with you that, they're using this, for personal gain with the institutions. But here's the thing. When have they not done that? Like in the history of football, college football,
Yeah.
when has each institution not been out for each institution? That's just until we start paying these people. That's just what it's going to be. We live in a very, very monarchy type system with football, especially in college football. You do what they say or you leave, and that's just the way it is. And I completely understand where you're coming from with being able to help these students get film and be able to do XYZ 1 2 3 ABC, all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, if you read through all these paragraphs, at the end of the day, the job is to get to championship. That's what the school wants. That's what each school wants to do. And that's what each program wants to do. That's what each coach wants to do. And if that's what they're not there to do, they'll get fired. And so, we're at the point now where NCAA is doing the best that they can with what they have to work with.
I agree with you on certain things about what you're saying on that. My point is at the beginning of this entire thing, especially, I'm definitely going to stick a needle on the Big Ten Conference because they had the biggest, loudest voice in all this thing about the conference not playing at the beginning. And they're talking about we were blowing these guys chances of film, and we were blowing these guys. They're trying to get what they needed to do and make that last minute chance. They use Joe Burrow as the example. If we would have got the chance to play, maybe we could have been the next Joe Burrow. Every chance one of these teams are feeling like they're out of it, their players are opting out. They're canceling games. That's a bunch of crap. And then you're trying to sell to the fans about we doing things with integrity. You're not. You can say, you can try to spin it any kind of way, but when it did suit you and you feel like you want to get the film, you decide to opt out and you didn't finish the job. You know what I mean? So you can't tell people about finishing drills and all that stuff when you're not doing the thing that you're not standing by your own integrity. And I'll go to bat with any of them with that because that's the way it comes across. You cross everything about getting a chance to play. Now the next chance, because you're not where you want to be, you're going to quit. And I'll say that word, quit. Same thing. You change the rules because you told the team, well, you have to play 6 games. Well, one of your teams quit and the other team was affected. Okay, we're just going to fix that. Go ahead and play in the championship anyway. How about that's just hypocrisy. And we're talking about trying to teach our kids doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and doing what's right. No, that's to me, you get a bad taste of my. And I'm just coming from a coach's perspective. It's hard for me to sell that to players to do the right thing, and you need to finish the job. You need to finish the drill. You need to follow through. Don't transfer because everything don't work out for you. And then as soon as it doesn't do like this, it doesn't work now. You want to cancel games. You want to opt out. That's just sending the wrong message. And I'll go to bat with any of these coaches, any of these administrators, because that's the way it looks to a lot of these young kids out here watching these guys on national TV and looking at these newspapers and all these different internet blogs. So we're going to go to the next subject. I know what my rant on that. We're going to talk about a little NFL right now. And it's been a crazy season. They kind of went through some of the same things with COVID as obviously college football. The least things I can say, at least they've made sure that all their teams have played their games. Obviously, Monday night you had one of the greatest football games I've seen in a while, with Baltimore and Cleveland. They're fighting for a playoff spot, and actually still trying to fight for a division, still like they're still in that race there. And so they're at the top of the heat when it comes to NFL. But let's talk to what's the box dwellers in the NFL, right? And you got a couple of great quarterbacks that are out there, and Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence coming up, and there's a couple other names that are out there that seem to be on the rise. And I guess the unfortunate team between like the Jaguars, the Jets. You have those teams. You have them. They have the chance to get one or both of these guys. The Bengals are third right now. They're sitting in the third spot. They seem to have their guy, but then again, we don't know the severity of Joe Burrow's injury, so they might be in the market for one of these quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting to see who ends up with that pick. I mean, we're here in Jacksonville, so we kind of settled on the spot that thinking that the Jets are going to lose out, they're not going to win the game, and we'll end up with the second pick and possibly getting Justin Fields out of Ohio State. My take is, with the way this season has started to go, Pittsburgh on their slide, a couple of teams, the Jets almost won a game. I still think that there's a chance that it might still be an arrangement. There's a chance still with only 2 wins, Cincinnati could still end up with it. I highly doubt it, because I think the Jets are just that inept and just that dysfunctional, especially at the coaching and in the front office. So, as a Jaguars fan, you want to see them win that game. The game's so close a couple of weeks ago against the Raiders, and people were out here excited. We got a chance to get the first pick, and it's pretty bad. We're rooting for the first pick. I know, watching the game this Sunday against the Titans, and everybody was hoping that they play well but lose the game. So their whole disappointment of being blown out was the expectation in the city now, which is pretty terrible, but that's just the way it is. And all the hopes of having that great franchise quarterback, which everybody hopes to have one day to lead their franchise for 10 or 15 years. I want to hear your take on it.
Well, my first thoughts on that, everyone who is wishing for the Jaguars to lose, I hope they get like a false negative COVID test. I don't want them to get COVID, but I just want them to be scared for a bit. Here's the issue that I think I'm personally having with everyone wishing for their team to tank. There has never been, nor as long as humanity exists inside of football, will there ever be a for sure draft pick, especially with the Jacksonville Jaguar franchise. And yes, the Jets right now, the way their season is looking, they are directly headed for the third team in NFL history to be 0-16. With that being said, the Jaguars are not actively trying to tank. They just announced Monday afternoon that Gardner Minshew will be starting this week against the Baltimore Ravens. And they're actively moving pieces around. People are fighting for their jobs over there at TIAA Bank Field. So, they're not trying to lose games. And for those fans who want them to lose games for a draft pick, good for you. And to answer your question, who's going to get that number 1 pick? Maybe the Jets. Depending on how the Bengals season play out, it may end up being them if the Jets decide, they feel like playing football on Sundays. But, right now everyone's kind of in the Trevor game, if you will. Justin Fields may be number 2. But if we look at the history of those bottom 3 teams, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, and possibly the Cincinnati Bengals, in the history of those 3 organizations, when have we ever been able to pick their number 1 draft pick? Because I looking back on the last maybe 5, even the last decade, you better write your draft pick in pencil, because the actual card they call off will be something totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree with you. As a Jaguar fan, the last 20 years has just been a big disappointment with a little bit of a tease in there. When you think they might be on the upswing, they turn around and they just go back to teasing you again. So, with the of having a new general manager who will be somebody that's hopefully a genius. We've been through several different general managers in the last 20 years, and we've had maybe 3 playoff appearances in this city. So I don't have hope. I'm definitely from here on out going to be a wait and see type person. I'm not going to be raising my hopes for anything. Knowing them, they might totally jump over either one of them quarterbacks and pick an offensive tackle. It's not of the realm of possibility to do something like that crazy. And I remember them; they had a chance to pick one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, even though they didn't know he was going to be that, and decided to pick a punter instead. Now he's leading the Seattle Seahawks to playoff appearances and Super Bowl wins. So you never know with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You just hoping that they'll find some leadership that will actually turn this franchise around where it could be a respectable franchise that people can really, be proud of year in, year out. You have those franchises because of the way their front officers are in the winning, are always winning. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they might have a down year comparatively to what they normally have, but they're always making playoff pitches. They're always making Super Bowl runs in the history of their team. Those are just franchises that do that. And then there's some franchises like I'll even say the Detroit Lions that can't win in their last time when they ever been relevant. The Jaguars can actually claim to have a better front office when you're talking about relevancy than they did over the course of the last 20 years. So there's teams that win and there's teams that lose, and I would give that to everything that's going on in that front office. So it's just, go ahead. I want to hear you talk.
Here's the interesting thing about that, and you alluded to them picking Bringer over Russell Wilson. Think about this: certain players work at certain places. The draft, for all intents and purposes, is literally pulling a needle out of a haystack, and I don't think the average fan understands that. Football is a mixture of preparation meets luck meets right timing type of sport. Whereas you have basketball and other sports where if you get that one or two pieces, you can make a run for the championship, a la LA Lakers. But football is a full 11 men. If you don't have the right 11 men out there, you won't win. So I can't say the Jaguars not getting Russell Wilson was the right move. We can look back and say, oh, it's the wrong move now because Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson in Seattle, but I can't say Russell Wilson would have been Russell Wilson in Jacksonville. And that's the thing about the NFL draft. You're basically going on a blind date. Hopefully the girl is not ugly. And hopefully, she let you do whatever, once y'all get done with your date. But to say all of that, that's what the draft is, and when you meet these young men, through whatever process that they go through via combine or, team workouts or pro days at their respective colleges and institutions, that's what we're getting. We don't know what's going to happen when they touch the field. Case in point, Jaguars drafted Justin Blackman at number 14 overall. He was supposed to be the next Terrell Owens. We all know the story of Justin Blackman. We have the story of Ryan Leaf. We have the story of Peyton Manning. We have the story of Charles Woodson. We have the story of Fred Taylor. We have the story of James Robinson, number 30 for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, who didn't get drafted. It is a shot in the dark with your eyes closed or open, just whichever one you hand commissioner the card with. My point is, the draft is not a science. It's more of a fairy tale, and hopefully your fairy tale ends well. Right now, for the Jacksonville Jaguar, teams like Jacksonville Jaguar, Detroit Lions, Cleveland's turning it around, but Cincinnati Bengals, that is right now that fairy tale is a horror story. And but you have teams like the Seattle Seahawks who finally figured it out. Teams like the Patriots who didn't figure it out until Bill Belichick got into the building. Teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who didn't figure it out until Tony Dungy got there. And then Chucky later on figured it out to help them out more. Teams like Baltimore Ravens, who until they got the right GM in place, they were a lower dweller. Teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got it right, got it wrong, got it right, got it wrong, and now they're doing well. So to all the fans out there, listen, yes, it sucks. If your team is one of the bottom ones that on a recurring basis get to pick 1 through 10. Yes, that means your team sucked last year. At the end of the day, because you got that number one player in college football, does not equal you being the best in the NFL. And, history always tells the end of the story. We can't. I can go back to the day we drafted Justin Blackman. I was in Orlando, Florida, and I was in my friend's bed jumping, and I accidentally broke the bed because I was like, "Yes, we got us a receiver. That's all we needed. Thank God." And now I'm thinking about, holy crap, we just wasted a draft pick. Thank you, whoever decided to make that. And I can only imagine how the Chargers feel about drafting Ryan Leaf and drafting, one of the Mannings that didn't end up playing in San Diego. So my point that I'm trying to make is, listen, if your team gets Trevor Lawrence, say the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you're a fan that wants to get Trevor Lawrence, congratulations. Who is Trevor Lawrence going to throw to? Look at my watch. It didn't tell me the time that who he can throw to. My point is, it's not a science. It's logic. And right now, logic is not on the side of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cincinnati Bengals, or especially New York Jets. So who gets the number one pick? History will tell that story. Who gets the better player? We'll have to wait and see.
I totally agree with you. That's totally debatable, and that's a whole different topic right there. When you're talking about the quarterbacks that are coming out in this draft, we'll save that for another episode, because that's going to be part of our pre-draft stuff and talk and things of that nature. So we'll leave that and tease that for down the line. I like that. That's a good segue into that. So you're totally right. It's still a crapshoot, because these franchises have been back for an extremely long time, and it's for basically the leadership that's been leading these franchises. And I think a lot, like I said, the end is the Jaguars' hope is because there will be a general manager, and the hope and prayer that they will bring in the right general manager finally to lead the franchise and make good decisions and get some lucky bounces for themselves as far as players that they'll be able to bring in. That's the hope, and that's everybody every year looks at the new shiny toy that's coming out of the draft and hope that's going to be their savior. So that's how it works, and that's what people talk about. But that's what keeps the NFL relevant year round. They're a year round entity because they have the draft, they have preseason, all the camps and things of that nature. So they're relevant 12 months out of the year. So that's one of the great things about being the NFL. We're going to find out, we're going to talk about something that's been aching at me, basically what we talked about at the start of the show, with this hypocrisy of all this stuff. We're going to talk about all these coaches that fire. We know every year coaches get fired. We're talking about college coaches in particular. With all the turmoil, with all the adjustments these coaches had to make, lack of practice time, players being out with COVID, players being a normal injuries, for this amount of coaches who've had resumes and had track records, maybe not at their institution that they're currently at, but they've done stuff in this game, to finally say, okay, this is going to be the year that we decide to let you go. I was just really kind of taken aback that the amount of big name coaches that are probably going to get the jobs immediately, maybe next season. They might be swapping from one school that got fired to go to another school, but they'll at least get jobs if they want at another institution. They might step down, but they'll get a job as a coach if they. About Coach Sumlin being fired at Arizona, Gus Malzahn being fired from Auburn University, and Illinois firing Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith, I think, took them to a bowl game. So you're talking about, and out of that, you're talking about, there's some African American coaches once again getting the axe. In a year like this, that you were thinking, okay, everybody should have kind of got a mulligan on this, and it's crazy that they didn't get that mulligan. And you're going to say, well, we're opting out of games and we're doing all this stuff. But this was a year that, in my opinion, everybody should have gotten a little bit of pass. Texas, the coach that replaced a coach that had a worse record than the coach currently has now, he's got all again to come back. I was just thinking, wait a minute, one of the worst seasons, and they had high expectations at Texas, and they lost games that nobody thought that they were going to win, and he got to keep his job. It's just the pure hypocrisy of it, and I have a problem with these guys, these institutions. Like I said, once again, doing things that logically just makes no sense.
It just goes back to my statement about drafting. Unfortunately, it's not a science. It's logic, and the logic in this instance is the athletic director falls on the athletic director and administration. We talk about, like you just mentioned, some names: Jay Hobson from Southern Miss, Gary Anderson from Utah State, Will Muschamp from South Carolina, and Derek Mason from Vanderbilt. All are now looking for new homes. Here's the thing, and I get what you're saying. In a year during the pandemic, this might have been the year to kind of ease up and maybe give them until next year. I agree with you to a point. And the reason, the point being, at the end of the day, this is a win now, not later type of sport. And I completely understand, every college coach had to deal with something that they've probably never dealt with before in their coaching career in COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. But once that whistle blows and you have 11 men on the field, the person across the field from you has 11 men on the field, your job is on the line. And unfortunately, I think every coach goes, especially college coaches, NFL coaches know this as well, and coaches especially in any profession or of sports knows that between the whistles, you're coaching for your job. And yes, a lot of people got unfairly dismissed from their positions this year, but it's the nature of the game that they decided to coach. Is it fair? Absolutely not. People will debate on fairness. They've been debating on fairness since Aristotle, and they'll probably debate on fairness till Robot 9000. So we can't argue that. What we can argue is, did they get a fair shot? And I believe a lot of these coaches did. You look at Will Muschamp. How the hell he got a job after he left Florida still is a mystery to me. Like a head coach job. I could get, if he would have gotten hired as defensive coordinator anywhere, I'd be like, you know what, y'all, he got a head coaching job. How he got that, I'm so confused. But he got it. Cool. Derek Mason. Listen, I talked about somebody making a beautiful meal out of chicken poop earlier. That man turned Vanderbilt program around. And honestly, had he got maybe 2 or 3 more years, you might have seen them being a little bit more competitive in the SEC. But it's the fact that he's in the SEC. If you don't win in the SEC, a la Will Muschamp, you're going to be dismissed. and that's just the nature of the sport in which these guys coach it. And granted, like you said, Kevin Sumlin, who is one hell of a coach. We saw what he did at Texas A&M. If he got a little bit more time in Arizona, he possibly could have done it there. But they don't have that time no more. You're not going to get the 5-year minimum that every coach is allotted. Some coaches are not going to get it, especially, coaches that look like other people. So at the end of the day, you got to win now or have U-Haul ready.
And I hear what you're saying, and I agree about the business aspect of the sport, but it ties back to what I was talking about, hypocrisy. Everybody's talking about, we're worried about these kids. Those coaches, my son got 22 million reasons to smile as he walks out the door. His settlement was $22 million. Derek Mason is one of the best coaches in college football. Like you said, he made, chicken salad out of chicken, you know what. And he is going to be awesome coach at a better school as far as football concerned. You give him the Penn State job, he'll have them in Big Ten championships. You give I would not want to see him as a Florida fan with the South Carolina job. I definitely want to see him with the Auburn job because the way he coaches defense and the talent that he was able to bring into a school that's so academically restrictive to, to get such talented players to come in there. If you look at over the time, the guys that he's put in the NFL with the records that they've had, he could put his body at that level. He is an awesome coach, and people, when he goes to a better program, are really going to see him as one of the top tier coaches in college football. So he's going to land on his feet. Lovie Smith is Lovie Smith. He's going. He's going to be all right. These guys. This is not about me complaining about the coaches.
COVID year, when you're talking about people who need to have structure and stability and having a little bit of people cohesiveness to keep things together, you're getting rid of guys that are telling that these guys are promised they're going to be there for them and all that. And then they had to be, well, please, son, don't opt out. Let's do this. Let's play through this. And you got these guys to stick around. These coaches got these guys to do things that they could have just, half the rosters could have said, because of COVID, I'm scared. I don't want to bring it to my family and opt out. And you wouldn't have had a season. And everybody's talking about, well, we're losing money. We need money. Coaches even taking salary cuts to help out the universities. They're doing things that they normally didn't have to do, Zoom meetings, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, because the expectations that you said that should have been met weren't met, when the whole expectation was the beginning, we just want to play. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden, this is your excuse to let these gentlemen leave. Okay, I always live by this motto: God is not mocked. You shall reap what you sow. And you think it's the grass is going to be green on their side? Time will tell, my friend. Time will tell. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how these programs fare after letting these guys go who put a lot of time in building these institutions where they were. And because of a COVID year, the records weren't where they was. You still not, besides COVID, you still had injuries. You still had guys you have to develop. Will these guys that they bring in do a better job? We shall see, because the resumes of these coaches that were let go were pretty damn good. And it's going to be funny to see who you bring in and what they're going to do. It's going to be interesting as we go forward in the 2020, 2022, 21 season for these college teams as we go forward. Well, we're going to get done talking with a little bit of college football. We're going to go something that just kind of slipped up on me, man. I mean, really, I was sitting here doing some work on the computer in the office and looked up, wait a minute, that's the NBA? They've already started? Wow, I missed that memo. And, I'm thinking they're still in the free agent mode. They're still trying to get people trying to pick their teams. They're playing ball. And I was like, ooh, okay, let me catch up here. So I'm more of a football guy. I like watching basketball when I have the time, but I want to know your take on what's going on, because I was expecting the NBA really not to kick up till right after Christmas, but I think they're probably going to start the regular season around Christmas time. You can kind of catch me up and let me know what's going on with those boys on the hardwood.
Oh, if you're looking for me to catch you up on the hardwood, you are looking the wrong way, sir. Listen, NBA got up. I mean, we're still in preseason. We're still working out contracts. Giannis Ngakoue. No, I'm sorry. Ooh, wrong person. See, that's how much I love football.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Uncle Tutempo, I still haven't pronounced that man's name right yet.
Yeah. One of them. He just signed a big deal with the Bucks, so he'll be staying in Milwaukee. And a lot of James Harden is still looking for a home. He does not want to be in Houston. He does not care that John Wall is there. But NBA is up and running right now. There are no fans in certain stadiums and certain arenas, but yeah, it's back. I mean, you got to realize some of these teams have not played basketball in a whole year. Yeah. So they were looking to get back, and right now they are not in a bubble. So look for them to pause, like we did in football, just a little bit. But basketball is one of those sports. It's going to get played. It's just like football. Yeah. You got America, apple pie. football and basketball. It's gonna get played.
So we're gonna look forward to seeing our Christmas Day basketball feast that we normally do. It kind of caught up on me because I'm like, wait a minute, that's Kyrie Irving. He's playing. Yep, there it is. And there's KD. I mean, he's back. I'm like, whoa, all right, we got these guys. And then I did kind of, because they were in that bubble, I did forget that there was a quarter of the league that didn't even show up into the bubble, so that they got time to get themselves ready. And so they're all ready to go. You got, you're talking about Golden State. I did hear about one of the Splash brothers getting re-injured. I think he blew out his Achilles. So he's down again. And then, they had one of the better players in the NBA draft. I did kind of get a look at that, and it was just like you went from the NBA draft. Okay, we're playing ball again. It was like, wow, we're getting right back at it. So I guess they want to make sure that they maintain back to their normal schedule. Because remember, there was a talk of that they were going to try to maybe take that opportunity being in the bubble to shift the season back so that they didn't have to compete with the NBA, with the NFL so much. But I guess they said, no, we're back to business as usual, schedule as normal, and we're going to start playing ball. And, our fans will get basically a year-round dose. Now, I do understand it because what happened was the Olympics would move back to 2021. So they want to probably get through their season and their playoffs so that those guys can be ready for their Olympic team to go to Japan for the Olympics to bring home the gold back. But I think they can pull out a random 12 all-stars in the NBA and go win that thing, So, but that's what they want to do. And so here we are with NBA basketball, and you and I and probably half of the nation are in catch-up mode to find out, hey, what's going on with this? Who's where? Who's doing what? Who's on what team now? So it's going to be interesting as we try to catch up with them in the midst of all this football and more football, because football is still going to be played by some of the FBS schools starting in February. A lot of the HBC, I think all the HBCUs start in February for football.
Right. You missed on a little bit. Yeah, they want their fans to be bad. And yeah, of course, the Olympics did get moved to 2021. Yeah, that CBA gets argued next year. So, yeah, they want to play now. And not mention with them being in the bubble, they probably lost out on a couple of $1 billion with those stadium revenue not being allowed in there. So, yeah, if we play ball, we're going to be losing some players.
Yeah. So, man, I tell you what, we got a little bit of taste of that. Until we catch up fully, we can't really dive into any great subject on this. So we'll catch up I guess next weekend and over the weekend, we'll watch some ball, kind of catch up on the news, who's doing what, who's where, because I'm still totally at a loss for all of the new switches of the players. Like you said, they still got guys still trying to negotiate where they want to play for the full coming season. So we're going to call it another wrap to this show. I really appreciate you being here, my friend. I want our fans to let us know we thank you, we love you, we want you to continue to tune in. I appreciate all the messages. I appreciate all the emails and texts that I got. For those who caught us on the replay of this, guys, continue to hit up our sponsors, SheCar, Team Sportswear Direct, the Women's Tackle Football League, and we'll be adding some more as we go. Hey, TSD, if you need any type of apparel, any type of sports equipment, any type of promotional products, Team Sportswear Direct, look us up online, teamsportsweardirect.com, and we'll take care of you. If you definitely need custom masks, if you need mask design, call Team Sportswear Direct. You will get all kind of things. Whether you want the Black Lives Matter or whether you want to go the Trump route and say, hey, we did a nice big order for Keep America Great, and hey, we're loving any kind of theme you got. We'll help you out. So until next week, we want to thank to our producers. We want to thank you, Andre, and you out there, sports world. We'll see you right here, right on the same channel next week on the Terry McGriff Show. God bless.